Going live.
Hello.
Are we live? Yes, I believe we are live now. I think we're live at least. Wait. Okay, now we're definitely live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Flooded Cinema episode 21. I'm joined today by John, also known as at Dashund Obese, and we've got again as part of the October special. We've got two more vampire movies, and there's some interesting similarities, but a lot of differences as well between these movies. Yes, say hello, John.
Hello.
Um,
Hello.
now,
Yes, good movies, good drastic movies.
yes. Now before we were talking about like having you on, and you basically said, "Oh, I'll watch anything, but I don't like horror movies." And then I said, "Oh well."
Thank you. It's a challenge. I know. I really did mean that, but I also definitely didn't care. So I honestly watched Martin at work because I was like, you know what? I knew Martin was going to be more disturbing, so I'll just go with at work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say Vampire's Kiss is more. It's like a dark comedy more than horror at all.
Oh yeah. Dark comedy. That's exactly how I ended up coming out realizing it was a dark comedy.
Yeah. But we'll get into Martin first. So Martin, there's some dispute. There's a weird amount of dispute as to what year it came out. So Wikipedia says 1978, Google says 1977, and IMDb says 1976. But anyway, it's the mid to late.
Okay.
It's the late 70s. It's directed by George Romero. Um, and so he'd had some fame at this point, but he hadn't released. This is the movie he did just before he did Dawn of the Dead, which is when he became really famous.
Mhm.
And it's actually his first collaboration with Tom Savini, who did all the effects for this movie and then also for Dawn of the Dead and a lot of other of his movies. And I'm trying to think what other little factoids do I know about this movie? Oh, the original cut of this movie was 2 hours and 3/4, so 165 minutes. But that has been lost to time, so there's only the 95-minute cut. And honestly, I feel like that was more than enough. Um, not in a
Yeah.
bad way, but it's like I cannot imagine what.
Yeah, it's because they did. Honestly, he did a good job that I wouldn't want to see more disturbing reasons, I suppose.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like all the maybe there were more plot lines or something, but I don't know. It was. Um, I want to say overall, it's a really well crafted film. It's a really good, well
Yeah.
made movie. You know, particularly for the budget. Oh, this is the other interesting little fact I read. So they listed the budget as $250,000, but it was actually the actual budget was 100,000, and they lied that they had a bigger budget to try and get distribution more easily to make it seem like, oh, this is a small movie, but it's not like a too dingy production. But yeah, so they lied about the production. So
Well, you could have fooled me. You could have fooled me with the main set piece, which was Kuda's home.
well, I mean, it
Um,
looks. I mean, the movie looks pretty good. It's really well. It
yeah,
is well shot. There's a lot of really
yeah.
good shots, and we'll get into that. But I guess, do you want to give the sort of general explanation of the plot? I suppose.
Sure. Yeah, he's. Well, really, I mean, the beginning of the movie, I would say, sets it off. But then of when he's well, he. The thing is, the reason I wouldn't say, oh, it's a vampire movie. It is, but in the sense is that he thinks he's a vampire and he acts it out by killing women and drugging them.
Mm,
And the first scene, the first opening of the movie is him doing that, and it's very disturbing
yeah.
because of the way he treats it. Like he treats it like he's a serial killer, like a crazy serial killer. Because he speaks to her, and he also is like very calming, so he's very delusional. To like, oh,
Yeah.
don't worry, like I'm gentle with. It's okay, like it's totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, I didn't. like, I mean, I knew we were watching a vampire movie, but if you watch it like that, if you didn't know it was a vampire movie, you just said, "Here's a movie called Martin." Um, the very beginning, that first victim, I suppose. I don't know if I would have caught it as, oh, he's a vampire. Like,
Yeah.
especially 1976. Like, I don't know, maybe, I guess maybe, but people are more aware. I'm a little more hyper aware now. Like, you might see the symbolism or whatever, but
Yeah.
it wasn't exactly because he uses a razor, right? Like,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
just, I don't know. It's more like I can't distinguish. So anyway, it's only because, like, okay, if you want to know my opinion of how it becomes a vampire movie is when he meets Kuda, after they meet and then Kuda starts
Yeah.
talking to him. That's when you know.
Mm.
But I mean, I don't know if you want me to go on or not. Like, and that's what makes it a good movie. And that's where I got notes is like,
Yeah.
well, but I did say, like, yeah, he's very meticulous. Like, the way he kills people is just like a serial killer. Like, he's
Yeah.
literally a serial killer because he takes everything is very meticulous. He's pretty obsessed. Um, and I did I said the movie begins very disturbing. It makes you feel ill, like most 1970s cinema. But that's
Yeah.
my personal.
Yeah. It is very 70s in its style, and its minimalism and things like that. And I thought it was an interesting. Um, I guess it is sort of like a take on the vampire film. I don't know. It's sort of like a deconstruction of um,
Yeah,
basically the vampire myth, and the idea is that whether or not vampires actually existed, it's the movie. I guess the most reductive way to sort of talk about it, like one of the major ideas in the movie is that vampires are just serial killers. Basically, that was sort of
yeah,
that's kind of the idea.
because yeah, Martin doesn't have a whole lot of lines he says in the movie, but okay, my dog. He does specifically say it's just magic, like,
It's
or
not
sorry,
magic.
it's not magic.
Yeah.
To Kuda, who Kuda's doing all the classic tropes of what a vampire is supposed to be like.
Yeah.
Uh, now he does explain later. The movie he doesn't explain because, like, he goes in and suddenly he meets Kuda and you're like, who's this guy? And he's very, and compared to Martin, he's well dressed and he looks kind of strange, I guess, compared to
Mm.
Martin, who just looks like a bomb, not a bomb, but just like a traveler, like a nomad.
Yeah.
And then he just starts calling him a vampire, like, where he starts saying he's like
Yeah.
evil and giving him all these orders, and it's good. That makes it a good movie because honestly, I used to think movies like that were like deranged, but they're like in the sense of like, why aren't they explaining this? But then he does
Yeah.
explain later. He gives them the full backdrop. But
Yeah.
yeah, like, he offers all the vampire stuff, right? He said he's got garlic hanging
Yeah.
on the
On the
doors.
doors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's got he at the very beginning. Um, he basically he insults Martin, but here's the thing: Martin deserves it all, but it's just that
Yeah.
Martin laughs at it all because he's being called a mythical creature. He
Yeah.
chases him down into that room, and then he's holding the cross, and he says, like, he just grabs the cross, he grabs the garlic, he bites it, he bites the garlic.
Yeah.
He's like, what does he say? I'm your cousin, because he doesn't say nephew, even though they're a lot
Yeah.
older. He's a lot older.
Yeah, and I think
I think he says,
that's deliberate that they say cousins, because it makes it confusing. Because that's the thing, you don't know, is Martin actually an 84-year-old vampire,
right,
or is the family just deranged, and like maybe the family has a sort of sickness in the family where there are a lot of relatives that became serial killers or something like that, and it is, yeah, it's deliberately ambiguous as to what's going on, because we have all those flashback scenes and it's unclear if it's just fantasy, Martin's fantasy. But then the thing is, that sort of lines up with what Kuda is saying to him. And it's sort of, and I like that it's not explained, like, where did he come from? Why is Kuda, like, letting him stay with him or anything? Although Kuda
yeah,
says he wants to try and exercise him, basically.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
he says, "Oh, you'll give you a job. You'll do this." He gives him like a schedule, and then he's like, "And I'm going to, like." Does he say save him, give him salvation, or?
yeah.
And Martin laughs at it. Like Martin thinks, see here, the thing that got me and the thing that's ingenious about the movie, because 1970s, first of all, and I'm not an expert, but I do know like 1970s has a lot of satanic movies, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like whether that's underground movies, like Martin's not seriously known, is it? Like you know what I mean? Like The Devil
It's
Rides Out and
relatively
all.
obscure. It's relatively obscure.
Okay,
It's
like what's that guy's
probably
name?
it's like one of the more obscure films by a relatively famous director. So I don't know.
Right. Okay. Well, it's just that he goes on, tells him all he's a vampire, blah blah blah, and then Martin says, like, "Hey, I'm your cousin. This isn't magic. Like this
Yeah,
cross, I'll grab it. It doesn't do anything. I'll bite the garlic. It's foolishness."
yeah,
And you know, Kuda is a Roman Catholic, so it's got all the Roman Catholic tropes of a Roman Catholic Christian, which is like the specific type of crucifixes and the statues of
yeah,
Christ and I think and Mary, and so he kind of laughs at all that stuff. And what I found interesting about just the idea of this whole, like you say, it's ambiguous who is Martin and like his age and he's his cousin,
yeah,
but he says it's just Matt. He says there's no such thing. Well, one of the books that he reads, and I mean, we're doing an audio podcast, so I can't like post a picture, but I was going to get the pictures. Like, he's reading a book that is a single eye in the middle, and the title is called Magic,
mm,
and that's one of Martin's books.
yeah,
So, I mean, like, what that tells me is that's like pretty classic in the occult people are either, and I wouldn't even call it necessary delusion, but they definitely don't draw the connection. Like like occult magic teaches illusion essentially. So like that's why a cross wouldn't just force you away, because to Martin he could care less about that cross. That's what it's
yeah,
about. It's that he doesn't care about that fending him off because it's not going to affect, because it's not magic, right? It's almost like he actually is right. Like Martin's correct.
yeah,
Like the power of the cross doesn't lie in just the object itself, right? So
yeah,
he knows this, and I just find that interesting that I didn't get to look at the rest of the books he reads, but what you do know is at the very beginning of the movie he likes reading books, and then later when he goes to Kuda's, he has a little pile of books.
yeah,
So that's like what he does. And one of them, the one that points out, is a single eye that's entitled Magic. I didn't know if there's anything
yeah,
else, and yeah, so it's an interesting take, because it's like you say, it's in the end he's not some magic flying vampire, but he's an
yeah,
occultist, which means he believes in like these ideas and he's executing them out like a serial killer. So
yeah,
I mean, he is lying to Kuda, right? Like he's trying to make Kuda feel like a fool, but
yeah,
is Kuda wrong? Like how he's not really wrong, you know?
yeah, yeah. And another interesting detail was that so they go to church one Sunday, and it turns out that the church has recently been burned down, and
Mm.
you really get a sense of this kind of pervasive nihilism in the 70s and in the like this random town near Pittsburgh or whatever, and it's this sort of
Mm-hmm.
sense of there's a loss of tradition and belief in well, I guess like religion, like in particular, but just this total apathy of like towards life in general, and you get that with the Martin character. He's sort of um, he's not like a hippie, but he's kind of like this burned out guy that has nothing much going on. He's kind of an incel, sort of.
Yeah.
But
And then so.
yeah, it's just it is a very nihilistic
Do you know what he reminds
movie.
me of? Like
Yeah,
actually, Martin is like the stranger in Albert Camus' novel.
that's it. That's
The,
interesting. Yeah, I can see that.
because everything that happens to him, okay, aside from the fact that he's going out and serial killing, but the things that do happen in his life, like it very specifically shows he just doesn't show a lot of emotion or care about the results of anything that happens in his life. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't matter, because
Mm.
obviously there's more stuff that happens as we go on in the movie, but like he just doesn't seem to get all bothered up about anything.
Mm.
Like he's an existentialist, you know, like it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like I guess it's nihilism in a form, but you're right. But going back to the city being nihilistic or just not caring, losing their sense of religion, I mean, they kind of show that because Kuda cares big time about Martin being this potentially evil person, which he's not wrong. And when he brings the priest over to discuss it with him, the priest could care less and laughs
Yes.
at him.
Yeah. Yeah, that I thought that was really bizarre as well because it was he basically just asked the priest, "What, you don't believe in demons?" And then the priest was like, "Oh well, I don't know." And I don't
Yeah,
know. I was like,
as
what the heck?
yeah, and all he cares about is like he cares about pleasures. He's cigarettes. Give me another drink, and I'll
Yeah,
have some more.
yeah. Um,
Like, look, I'm not bad mouthing smoking, or I'm not judging, but But the idea, I always thought it's weird that the American ideal of a Catholic priest is that they always smoke, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, how would
mm,
parishioners accept a priest just casually smoking? Like,
mm,
anyway, that's all. I've seen that in movies many, many times, so it's not like it's the first time. But
yeah,
yeah, I guess to put it more detailedly, he only cares about his pleasures because he's chowing down on food and snacks. He's getting served those things,
mm,
drinks and cigarettes, and then he's scoffing at Kuda for trying to be serious about like spirituality. His
yeah,
faith.
yeah. Um, and then there's also there's the woman who later on has an affair with Martin, and
Yeah.
then yeah, and then she commits suicide. Yeah, it's
Do you
just
find that? Did you find that that was like? It took me a little while to like think of it, and maybe I'm wrong, but it's because it's like everything in that movie has all these vampire tropes, but on a like you call it like you say a, deconstructed form. So like how like the old idea of the vampire, um, who is he's the Dracula, he's the leader vampire, and he attracts women. Women are just attracted to him,
yeah,
and they just like fall for him so hard. Well, that's kind of what happens with that woman in Martin, right?
yeah. That was sort of that trope, done in a weird way. It was just she basically hated her husband or something, and
Yeah.
so and Martin was just the man that was in her house, pretty much.
Well, she's like saying like I want to hold you or something. Like
Yeah,
she just seemed really, really like over the top into him. And Martin's like, all right, like he didn't even say anything. Like I
yeah.
don't even think he said
Well,
anything.
the thing is, he appears, and we see like explicit examples of this. His character, he pretends to be dumber than he is to most other people.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
so he just doesn't talk. He just lets people talk, and
yeah.
he just sort of listens and observes, basically. And
And he's also with all that he is so much there to convince the people around him that everything they believe is dumb or wrong in
mm,
a sense. And I mean that because he tells, like he said, he tells Kuda at the beginning, and he tells him twice. There's no such thing as magic. Well, remember when he's sitting with Kuda and Kuda's granddaughter, and he's got that guillotine, that little toy
yes,
guillotine,
yeah,
and he specifically makes to show that it's that you can trick people into believing
yeah,
that it's actually going to cut your finger off when it actually doesn't, so you can fake
yeah,
it essentially.
yeah,
I just find that hilarious because it's a guy telling you about tricks and lies. Well, he's actually killing people and then
yeah,
lying about it. Like it's just so classic a nihilist and a Satanist.
mm,
Like they're there to deny. Like they're not going to admit. Why would
yeah,
they ever admit?
yeah. And I think it's a really good portrait of, um, yeah, like how evil and deception can work, And I think, yeah, there is a lot going on in this movie, even though it might seem like I don't know. I didn't find it boring or dull or slow at all because it is only 90 minutes. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it was just really
No, it
well
was
done.
more disturbing. Like because yeah, everything's they all have issues. Like the granddaughter seems like I forget, but she's upset. Like
Her
well, she's upset that
boyfriend's,
Kuda.
uh,
Yeah, and Kuda thinks so badly of Martin, and she's worried about that. I think
mm,
because she doesn't believe because he guys that's what Martin says. Martin says, "Well, do you believe him? Like that I'm
yeah,
this?" And she's like, "No, I don't believe that stuff." And he's like, "Okay, like
yeah,
yeah." It's very strange because again, Martin. I thought Martin and the daughter were gonna get together for whatever obvious reasons. I thought.
yeah. But I guess well, because he is relatively clever about what he does. Like he doesn't.
Yeah.
Because whenever he did kill people, it was, he heard that because he overheard that woman was saying, "Oh, I'm not getting off the train at Pittsburgh. I'm getting off the train at New York or something." So he
Right.
knew that, oh, if I kill her, when we get to Pittsburgh, no one's gonna um, be looking for her there. So I can get it. I can slip away without there being any problems.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
And so he does, and there's lots of little details like that, and it's and like he works out with that one woman when she's going to be home alone, but then it turns out obviously that she's having an affair as well. Um, and then there's that really intense sort of scene where he's running around in the house, um,
Yeah.
like he can just like has all the needles and he keeps loading them up and
Yeah, like the fact, yeah, that was wild because he's like really clever, right? That shows how crazy he is because he's ripping around, refilling the needles, and like he's like checking the doors, like he's very meticulous.
yeah.
Like that guy was a lot bigger than him, and it was like he didn't seem all that worried. He just did what he did.
Yeah, and he knew straight away. Okay, there's a guy, so I need to stab him first with the needle to like deal with him, and then I'll worry about the woman. And like you can see his like thought process play out as he's doing it, and it's really really well done. And I thought the cinematography and the direction during that was amazing. Like there's this one shot where it's I think she's in like a walk-in closet or something, but there's two doors, and she's gets sandwiched between the two doors, and it's yeah,
Yeah,
if you remember that bit, and like he's trying to get at her,
yeah,
and yeah, but it's
yeah. Like,
um,
yeah,
I
really good.
think one thing I like about '70s movies, or I appreciate about them, is that when it's a movie about a anti-hero or a movie where you're following the villain, they're actually a
Yeah,
villain. It's not like nowadays where
yeah.
it's, oh, this
I don't
movie
know what.
follows an anti-hero, but actually they beat up racist people, or they beat up X, Y, and Z,
Exactly.
but they just happen to swear or something.
Yes, the movie, this movie, totally like I won't even say half the notes I have in it because it just gets too deep. Because this movie really does. It's movies like this that guys can go back and prove to people like evil exists in the world and evil and people know about it or something like it really boils down to like here's people doing the like okay, I'll say this. Kuda is trying to say the whole time, he's trying to say this guy's bad, he's a vampire, and they're saying like the granddaughter is a rationalist and she thinks her grandpa is too out there
Hmm.
and she just thinks it's bizarre and just gone. And so her whole town, including her priest, are all like rationalists, and their faith is watered down to nothing. So that when Kuda, who is devout, you can clearly tell he's a devout Roman Catholic.
Yeah.
He even if he's wrong, even if it's like, oh, I'm using the term vampire, like he actually defends the term vampire. That's when he gets into the background of it all. But
Yeah.
really, he sees it and he's right. That's the whole
Yeah.
point. Is he's
He's
right the
just got
whole time.
he's got some details wrong, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And Martin was like, even like we don't. That's the thing. That's what's cool about movies like this compared to new movies. New movies would probably try and make Martin more of a guy who's like, when Kuda's calling him out on it, and we the audience know he's right in a sense. Martin would try and like hide it or defend it, or almost like you'd see it as a character. Like, but he doesn't. He's just like, Kuda, you're wrong, and it's like that's flat out. Even though we know he's like Martin's a killer. Like it's just cool.
Mm.
It's delusional and it makes you confused. It's like you say
Yeah.
with the ambiguous stuff of his nature. Like he's gonna flat out lie and he'll never admit otherwise. Like he's never gonna. It's a straight
Yeah.
face the whole time. Is what I mean. Yeah, Martin is a
Yeah.
straight face guy the whole time.
And that's what I find it's interesting is like he's lying to other characters, but it's also like as the audience we're being lied to because we don't know what's going on regarding is he actually because he even basically admits to himself he is a vampire, but maybe he's delusional as well in a certain sense. But it's
Yeah.
unclear whether or not he believes that he's actually 84 years old or whatever it is. He's however old he's supposed to be because he looks like what 20
Yeah.
basically.
And and we know the one thing he's doing is when he kills people, he is drinking their blood. So
Yeah.
again, it goes down to like it kind of touches upon real occultism. Like if there was vampires, maybe they're not flying around and they're allergic to
Mm.
garlic or whatever, but they are drinking blood because they believe it gives them youth or vibrance or something. Like
Yeah.
it kind of comes down to that. It's very simple. It's basically your idea of something is filled with a bunch of delusions or illusions, but there is truth in it, and that's kind of this movie proves that, like, or at least the point it seems is like Martin is somewhat of a vampire. Kuda was right to a big
Yeah.
extent, but everybody's confused. Like nobody like, and then the general world past Kuda and Martin, they just can't see any of that. Like they just
Mm.
don't see any of it.
Mm. And there's another interesting scene. So there's the exorcism scene where Kuda has managed to get a priest to do an exorcism, but then Martin
Yeah.
runs away, and then he puts on like a vampire costume to scare Kuda,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like another attempt to um, make him lose his faith, basically,
Yeah.
because he's wearing the fake teeth, um, and he's got the cape on and everything, and yeah, he seems to, yeah, he always just does things with Kuda, I guess, to, yeah, try and make him lose his faith, and then with everyone else, he
Yeah.
just doesn't say anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Like he's.
That's okay.
My obese dash hound is like bugging me. Anyway, the other thing too is you're totally right. And then I forgot. Remember, he has delusions with the people he kills.
Hmm.
Remember, so in the very beginning of the movie, right before he enters into the woman's train
Yes.
apartment, he envisions that she wants him to come in, that she's
Yeah.
waiting for him to come in. And then when he's with the other woman who he follows, who has the lover, the guy, he also imagines that this is what she wants.
Yeah.
So he's in delusion that what he's doing is what's wanted by the victim,
Yeah.
which is, to me, that's I get all I could get with that for myself was, oh well, that's like, isn't that classic serial killer behavior? I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. I
But yeah,
think yeah, this is one of the best serial killer movies that I've seen. Honestly, it's
yeah.
if you
I
call it a
just
serial killer movie, I mean, it's a disturbing movie.
yeah,
If you like, I think if you're not used to watching old movies, you might watch it and be like, "Oh, this is boring. This is kind of cheesy. What's going on?" But um, I don't. If you have an appreciation for '70s films, there's a lot to unpack here. It's a really, it's basically a character study uh, of a serial killer with this sort of vampire twist on it, which I think it doesn't, because in some situations you might have things like that where it kind of cheapens it, but I feel like it elevates the whole thing, and it sort of brings in these questions of spirituality and evil, and yeah, I
yeah,
really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was, yeah,
yeah. I
really.
think all of that is solid. I just I have an entire hunk of note which is not worth reading, just on the '70s decor and the vibe that the
Mm.
1970s brings to me. Just like take away all the plot just for a second and just put on like the house they were in, the
Mm.
decor, even the decor, and the lady, like the lady with the mistress or the affair she has with the guy.
Yeah.
Like she's a little more wealthy, right? Obviously. I mean, either way you go, they found like I just couldn't handle the '70s decor, but that's the thing is, like, I'm watching this movie and I'm also disturbed, but I'm also realizing as I'm taking notes, I'm like, no, this is a solid, like, this movie's smart, like it was written
Mm.
well, done well. So it's, yeah, if we're talking for its time, this would have been an underappreciated movie probably, but
Yeah.
bump it up 2 decades and it would be way better. Just put the same plot, just put it just for decor and style, just bump it a couple decades and you'd be fine.
Yeah. I mean,
Even
you couldn't make a movie like this today at all.
no,
It's too.
unfortunately.
It would be. I'm just trying to imagine. It would be from the. See, a dumber movie. It, even like a dumber version of this movie would probably be made in the '80s, where it's from the girl's perspective, and it's like, oh, my long lost cousin is coming to town, and it's from her perspective.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how I would imagine the
I can save him,
yeah. But
but
yes,
then it would be
and that's
based
what I
on
like about this movie is it opens with him, um, because it could have opened with it being the first thing is his interaction with Cuda and Cuda saying you're an evil vampire, and then we would have been like, oh, what's going on? But because it opens with him killing someone, and then he's saying, oh, you're a vampire, it's like even
yeah,
more confusing in a way that's because you just don't know how to piece together the information you've got. It's
yeah.
um, but
It's like the
not in
old
like a
world.
unsatisfying way. It's just I don't know. There's
Mhm.
something really compelling about it.
Yeah, it's old world and new world meets in a
Mm,
way because Kuda's so old school, and it's not that Martin's just a I don't know, he's just a young guy part of that decade, but Kuda's definitely disconnected from the current culture,
mm,
and but they're both I don't know, like it's cool that the movie has them both to the point where yeah, like you said before, Martin doesn't say much of anything to anybody except he will interact with Kuda with emotion, right?
mm,
Now it is because Kuda's accusing him of literally the thing that he is in a sense, but
yeah,
it's still good because they're having this battle. I also wanted to say when the priest was over and they're in the living room, Kuda specifically mentions, "Do you?" I think he says, "Not maybe not believe." I think he says, "Believe or do an exorcism," and the priest makes fun of a mystical rite of their church.
yeah,
Like he directly makes fun of it, and I just find that funny. Like like I bet you that's a comment on the Roman Catholic Church not like losing its power, I suppose,
mm,
or its mysticalness. Because I mean, George Romero. I mean, we have to say like everybody took pot shots at the Roman Catholic Church and
in the
American cinema from
'70s,
like
yeah,
70s, 80s, right?
yeah,
They all smoked cigarettes and were like useless as priests. Like if you jump to I don't want to jump you, but if you jump to the movie Vampires by James Woods, their Roman Catholic priest
yes, yes,
has fuckers,
yes,
but he's a
yeah,
priest and he's doing their rites with them.
yeah. That movie will be discussed on the show. I don't know, in the next week
That
or so.
movie's awesome. Yeah, that
Yeah.
movie's yeah, okay. We don't have to
Um,
go there, but
yes.
that movie's
The other thing I want to quickly mention was the fact that when Martin is confronting Cooter and saying, "Look, it's not real. It's not real," he never denies the fact that he kills people. He only denies the fact that garlic injures him, or cross or like crucifixes injure him, or like some these other vampire things.
That's right.
Yeah. And then
Yes.
I'm trying to think. Is there anything else to discuss
Um
before the ending? We'll talk about the ending as well. Is there anything
Um,
else?
the idea of I was just saying yeah, you were just talking about him denying it. I would as well, and that was actually one of my notes was um, yeah, he's simplified like he kills. He's a psycho, um, and he willingly accepts it. Like I just feel like
Yeah.
he's denying. Yeah, like he just really he's fully embraced what he does
Mm,
because he seems like well as far as I know when he reacts with Kuda he just yeah he has no remorse like you say
yeah.
he's only denying the little pieces the little extras that have to go with what
Yeah.
Kuda believes
Yeah.
the solving things to help a vampire to ward off a
Yeah.
vampire he's not actually getting to the root of what a vampire is which is killing someone right and drinking
Yeah.
their blood
The
it's
only other
interesting
thing I just thought of as well is the fact that he calls into the radio,
yes I forgot about
and
that
I like that because that was, I think, a um, clever workaround, instead of just him having a monologue or something like that.
yeah
And I think it reveals more about him. Yeah, because yeah, he's talking anonymously to this radio station. Yeah, I like that aspect as well.
yeah
But I guess we'll talk about the ending. I mean, it's not. I mean, it is a spoiler, but it's not like it's a twist or anything necessarily. Like you can kind of
no
predict that the ending of this movie was going to go one of two ways.
And I think the ending actually, because for the sake of the talk of both movies, the ending needs to be said.
Hmm.
The
Um,
ending of both of those need to be said, but yeah.
yeah. So the ending of this movie is there's a woman that he's had an affair with, um, and then she kills herself, but he didn't kill her. At
No,
least, yeah, he definitely did not kill her. Um,
I didn't get the impression he did.
no, there was no indication that it was he deluded himself into thinking, because we're always shown in excruciating detail when he does kill someone, so it wouldn't make sense that this bit is left ambiguous. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, he's had an affair with this woman, then she's killed herself. And at the beginning of the movie, Kuda said, "If you kill anyone in town, if you take anyone in town, um, I'll kill you. Basically, I'll kill you without your salvation." Um,
Right, that's right, yeah.
and that's the other, so when he has killed people, that's why there's all these stalking scenes because it's been someone out of town or someone far away, and that's why he's sort of been doing that. And so, and that's the other interesting thing is like Cooter is basically aware. Okay, I'm aware of the fact that you're going to be killing people.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like his
I know, like
admission.
it's a very confusing movie, and this is the real world, in my opinion. Because I was gonna say, I'll say one thing: if you compare the exorcism, or even the act of Cuda at the beginning, where he's like the garlic and like holding the cross, and I put garlic on the door, and Cuda, or sorry, Martin laughs at that and laughs it off. That to me is the trope of what it is to cast out a demon in like the fictional world.
Yeah,
Let's just whatever movie, the idea of casting out a demon, like when you cast out a demon, even in the Bible, Jesus will say, I think he mentions one. These demons take fasting and prayer. And if you
yeah,
jump to the Russian movie, the island gives you an example, a fictional example, but a real world one of how the Orthodox monastics deal with demonic
yeah,
people, which is prayer and fasting, like lots of prayer and fasting. So, like, they don't go at them by touching them or do like they don't need to get specific. Like, there might be rites and this and that, but it's like
yeah,
it just takes work. It's work. And Kuda is just under the impression that like these little things
yeah,
will ward him off, and that's what makes Martin kind of scoff at it.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
That's a good point. But yeah, basically, Kuda finds out about this woman's suicide and assumes that it was Martin that killed her. And so then the ending of the movie is literally Kuda coming into Martin's room while he's in bed and then stabbing him through the heart with a crucifix, or like with a
yes,
yeah, which is a great ending. And then I love the the sort of the final sequence as the credits roll of him burying the body in his backyard while like the radio plays and people are asking, "Oh, what happened to that vampire guy?" But I think I like from a sort of a script point of view, I like how he dies at the end because um, the whole time Kuda is correct in assuming that he's evil, but he's sort of wrong about the details. And again, Martin probably deserved. I mean, he deserved to be killed, but
yeah, he would have kept on killing, right?
yeah, but Kuda was wrong about the details, so he killed him, which is what he deserved, but for the slightly incorrect reason. Um,
Yes,
which I thought was like an
but it was
interesting
almost
little
like
ironic twist.
yeah, and it was almost like God's justice on Martin because Martin couldn't escape the death, even though he didn't kill the woman. But the
Yeah.
woman killed herself. Like the woman killed herself through her own choice, but also Martin was like not disconnected from this woman, and then
Mm.
it ends up killing him. Like, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, he was having an affair with her, so. But anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he was doing bad stuff, but like, yeah, her choice. Like, I'm sure he didn't understand that she was going to do that, but she was pretty sad and
Yeah.
upset. Like that's the thing is that's what made that good too. Is like that woman was bizarre because she was like she came off to me as like as not a psychopath and a killer sense, just like real disturbed because she didn't know what she was doing. Like she was just
Yeah.
like,
Well, because immediately after they first sleep together, she just begins drinking and crying, basically.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. And that's the other thing. He's not supposedly a mystical vampire, but after they sleep together, okay, it's one thing. I get it. She's really distraught, but it's like that's what I noticed too. Is like Martin has sex with her, sleeps with her, and she just goes off the rails, like with sadness
mm,
and despair. and it's like, what, did you sleep with a demon or something? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I know that's not really the case, but it's just that normally, at least in movies, I've never seen that before, like where
Yeah.
that's what happens, right?
Yeah.
There's regret,
Well, this is
but that
probably a
she
more
must.
realistic depiction of what having an affair is like, I guess.
True, true. That's true. Yeah, no,
um,
solid movie. Solid movie. It was better than I thought, and I just it was the setting that hurt me the most, honestly. So that's not even that bad of a thing to say because it was a good, like, the written story itself. You got to give that, and I think George Romero.
he wrote it
I
as
think that,
well.
and he said that was his favorite project or favorite movie too.
It's his most restrained movie for sure.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, it was the
So
Wikipedia. Yeah.
I think I
Are
think
we
that's everything.
ready?
I think that's everything. So, Vampire's Kiss.
Mm.
So Vampire's Kiss, 1989. I thought it was 88.
88.
Yeah. So
I think it's
again,
80.
there's ambiguity as to when things supposedly come out, which is kind of annoying. But
Yes.
anyway, 88, 89, whatever. Um, uh, Directed by Robert Bierman, who basically did nothing after this. Um, this movie was made on a $2 million budget, and it returned less than 1 million.
Yeah, you
And
gotta wonder why they made this movie.
it flopped heavily and was panned heavily um, in its reception, and pretty much they're all wrong. It's because it's an amazing movie.
I'll tell you, by the end of it, I did change my mind on how I felt about the movie. But I had questions off the bat. Can we
Mm.
just start with one thing?
Yeah, go
Is
ahead.
Nicolas Cage's accent?
I loved it. I
What?
loved it. I loved it so much.
I
What
did too.
it was like? What is that? Is that just like a feet wasp accent? I don't.
I don't know. Was it a former Brit? I'll tell you this: in the movie, he says specifically, "I was born in Pittsburgh
Mm.
and spent most of my time in New York." So it isn't British or European. So I don't know what's going on with
Because
that.
it did seem like someone born in like upper crust England and then moved
Yes.
over to New York when they were like 10 years old or something. That's what it sort of sounded
Yeah.
like. But I loved it because I think it plays into the old world connection of vampires and like the aristocratic sort of idea of vampires as well. Like the whole Count
Yeah,
Dracula thing. But
that's true.
yeah,
Well, what
I
about his
really liked it.
laughing at the beginning when he first picks up a woman? He's in the club.
Ah, yeah.
He has some specific laughing where I'm like, all right, that's Cage. That's like peak Nicolas Cage laughter, where it's almost like you're like, Nick, my friend, do you actually laugh in real life? Like, is this like, do you know what laughter is in real life? Like, he just cannot sound like authentic in his laughter ever.
I think his acting style, I would refer to it as post realism,
Okay,
cause or
fair enough.
post naturalist. Like, cause most, I don't know. I love his acting style. He's one of my favorite actors. Um,
I love his movies. Yeah, I love his movies.
and I think this movie, watching it, you remember how many different memes, like in old school memes as well, come
Yeah,
from this movie. Like old school memes. Like pretty much every second scene is a meme now.
yes,
Um, and the thing is, not many people have actually sat down and watched this movie, and it's a movie that is worth watching because it is. I would put it,
yeah,
in the same tier as American Psycho in terms of the black comedy type thing.
yeah.
It's
That's a good
very
point.
similar sort of movie. Um,
Yeah.
the New York business guy um, sort of goes crazy and sort of starts doing, serial killer esque type things. Um, But I love
Yeah,
this
he's a
movie
yuppie.
so much. It's so funny.
He's a yuppie, right? Like, or
Yeah,
like whatever. He's a white businessman who's like rich, upper crust, and
yeah,
living the high life.
yeah. Um,
But there's a lot of funny things in it. Like, especially now that I think back, there's some cool, funny ideas with this movie. But we can get to it.
yeah. So I guess does it at the beginning of it is him seeing his psychiatrist,
Right.
and this movie. I mean, I think the psychiatrist sort of functions partially as a way for him, similar to the radio station in Martin,
Yeah.
as a way for him to kind of have a monologue or a soliloquy that's not like a literal voiceover. Um,
Yeah.
but she actually feels more like a character and not just a something there for him to talk to sort of say what his thoughts or whatever. But I
Yeah.
love it's pretty negative sort of view of psychiatry, I guess, or it's she's not shown as particularly competent or incompetent necessarily. I guess I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. She's not super helpful.
Yeah. Um.
Not until the end.
That's one of my favorite scenes of the movie. That was so funny. But we'll get to that. We'll get to
Definitely
that.
my favorite. Yeah. Yeah.
Um.
Can I say one other thing that I don't know if we
Yes.
want to get? It's just a statement. Cage. So for whatever reason, I just don't. It's one thing I couldn't put a pin on. It must have just been a choice. I'm assuming by the director, by the producers, whatever. Cage's character has jungle fever. Like I just don't like. Otherwise, I think it needs to be said because otherwise you're like, well, what movies are like that? Unless there's a movie called Jungle Fever, which is about that. But
Mm.
other than that,
Well,
why? I
yeah.
don't know.
I don't want to get too much into it and be unoptical or anything, but it is interesting that the two women that he sort of pursues in the first third of the film are both they're both African American queens.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm not necessarily sure. I don't think there wasn't any really racial element in any other aspect of the film, so it must have just been they were the two best
No, and
actresses.
I'm not. I will not be an optical. And I thought. I honestly, I was. I thought Jungle Fever's the kind of the fun and still correct term in the sense that he likes his queens, his
Yeah,
but I noticed it, and then
yeah,
the movie moves towards the who is it, I suppose the villain in a sense or two villains because
yeah,
Cage kind of. But
yes.
anyway, so is there three women? Is there three African American women? I
No,
guess
there's
maybe
two. There's two.
two. Okay, never mind. There's two. Okay.
Yeah, and the woman he kills later on is white, but
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah,
I don't
you're right.
know.
At the bottom.
I noticed it because it would be of note if it was two Asian girls as well. It's just sort of I don't know.
That's all I mean. Yeah, I'm just
I don't
taking
know.
note of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I don't know if there was if there was anything to glean from that necessarily.
I
Um,
think more. I don't think story wise there's anything to glean from it. I just think for I just wanted to point that out as like
yeah,
when a movie makes any choice that stands out from the typical. That's all I'm saying is they don't
yeah,
explain it in the movie
yeah, yeah,
and it's there. And it's like as if we aren't supposed to like as if an average audience wouldn't at least kind of go, oh, well, okay. Like I don't know,
yeah,
maybe not.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. It was. I noticed it. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
so yeah, go ahead.
should we get to the kind of the initial beginning of his life, like after he makes he takes a woman home to his apartment?
So yeah, he takes a woman home, and they're in the what I don't know in the throes of passion, and then a bat flies into his apartment, and he has to sort of fight it off basically, and he gets
Yeah.
bitten by the bat, right?
Mm-hmm. I
Or,
wasn't
or
honestly. I wasn't sure if he
or
got
did he
bit
not get bitten by it? He gets bitten later.
later. I don't think the bat bites him
Yes.
because he does. So they fight with the bat. It's just classic Nicolas Cage. They fight with the bat, but she runs out kind of laughing in the end because I'm
Yeah.
assuming they're like drunk, and
Yeah.
he just he just laughs it away, and they head
Yeah,
off somewhere else. And
yeah,
he comes back the next morning to see if the bat's still there, right?
yeah. And then he sees his psychiatrist, and he says, "I felt a sexual arousal um, when I was fighting the bat." And we'll come
Yeah.
back to that. We'll come back to that. And then that night he goes out again, and he meets another woman, and he takes her home, and then she bites him on the neck during the throes of passion. Um,
Yep.
and he falls sort of heads over heels for her. He really likes her, and um, he's mentioned to his psychiatrist, oh, I just love them and leave them. Basically, I bed a woman and then I just want them to leave straight away. But this woman is different for him. So he when he wakes up in the morning, he goes and makes coffee, and he's sort of saying, "Yo, we should go see the show on Broadway," or whatever he says, like whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I love the shot. It's him. He doesn't even notice. It doesn't make any sense because he's walking towards the bed with the
Yeah.
coffees, and then he sits down and he like goes to hand her the coffee, and then he realizes she's not there, and like his hand starts shaking, and I love that.
He's shaking. Like he's shaking. Yeah. I did. I was like, why is he shaking? To me, I like shook my head and I'm like, Nicolas Cage. That's all I thought.
And it didn't like how did he not realize she wasn't on the bed? I
I
think
feel like it's the directors let
yeah.
Nicolas Cage do comedy choices or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I really wonder how they market it. It just seems like a movie out of time. Like if it had have come out 10 years later, I think it would have been much better received. Because I don't know if this style of comedy was really a thing in the 80s.
Yeah, I
Or
know because there's not that many dark comedies or I can't think I can think of a couple, but I'm not there's not like a big lot of them, is there?
there's like horror comedies in the 80s, like Evil Dead and stuff like that. But yeah, I can't think of,
Yeah,
like American Psycho came out either 99 or 2000, and that was
yeah,
well received then. So it seems like it was just sort of slightly before its time, this movie. Or it
that's
wasn't,
true.
maybe it wasn't marketed well. Maybe it was marketed as something different.
Well, and
Who
honestly,
knows?
yeah, American Psycho did the details probably a little better than this movie. This
Yeah.
movie was like a baseline of American Psycho, but
Mm,
it's still good. It's more
mm.
baseline, like the detail, the yeah, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like the quality of American Psycho
Yes.
is different, but yeah.
Yeah.
But
Um,
this is good. Yeah.
yeah. Um,
I was gonna. Um,
Go ahead.
did you notice when he goes? So like the movie's about vampires, but it's very different because it ends up being that she bites him, and he's like now he's obsessed with her and going all over. I noticed when he was going. Now I forget this part of the movie he goes to. I thought it was his apartment, but it turns out not to be. Is he looking for that woman? Not the woman that bit him, but it was like another woman. And
Yeah.
there's like mimes dancing outside,
Yeah.
and then there's like a lot of activity going on within the building. There's like a couple, and the
Yeah.
one guy he has like a court jester hat on. I
Mm.
noticed he's a black guy with a woman. He had a court jester hat on, and then there's the mimes. And all I'm saying is like mimes, court jesters, and like vampires are all kind of under the mythical account. Like they all like mimes exist
Mm.
and all that stuff. But I will tell you that I just reading Saint Simeon of Emesa. He went to a group who is a juggler and a group of mimes, and he said I'm going to help the juggler out because the juggler has a good heart, and so I'm going to get him to stop being a juggler. And it made a note to say that they were jugglers and mimes were considered of the pagan and occult era.
Mm. That
And I
makes
just
sense.
find that yeah, and even the book, I'm just even the book makes note to say that was what they said then. But then it's like movies like this are about vampires. Why show mimes? Why show court jester? Like they
Mm.
clearly must be a link, and the people that make these movies. Well, I don't think it's a huge secret, honestly. You just have to read well, The Golden Bough is like a very popular book, and it's like very occult and pagan and just
Mm.
like so I just people think it's wild to connect those kind of things in movies, but when I
Yeah. I
see
mean, it's very
I just
deliberate.
think yeah, I think it's deliberate. Yeah, that's all I'm saying. It's,
Yeah.
it's deliberate.
Um. Then there's the bit where he's on the date with the first girl, and he just leaves in the middle of that date because he's just so bored with her. He's not interested at all. I thought
Yeah.
that was hilarious.
Oh yeah.
And then I like that he goes and he sees the psychiatrist again, and the psychiatrist is saying, "Oh, um, let's discuss this bat thing a bit more. Like, why were
Hmm.
you aroused when you were fighting this bat?" And then he's saying, "Oh no, I wasn't. I was just drunk. I was just blah blah blah." And he sort of gaslights his own psychiatrist because he's sort of realizing he's sort of realizing he doesn't know necessarily how much he wants to reveal to the psychiatrist about what he's sort of thinking is going on now.
Right.
And I like that. And
Yes.
then we have to discuss as well, like one of the most amazing plots in this movie is him at his job and he needs to find a
Yeah.
contract for. So he works at a publishing company, and he needs to find a particular contract for one of the clients. He wants to find he wants to find one of the first contracts he did with them as like a memento. So he gets his secretary Alva to look for it, and he just is so abusive to her. It is. It was like a Sam Hyde sketch or something. It was just insane. It was so funny
Yes,
the
and
way
like
he would
he
treat
would
her.
even go back. He would like speak to other people about like, hey, like if you knew where a file was, like if you had a bunch of files
Yes.
and I told you to go find it, wouldn't you find the files? And they're like, well, probably eventually. Exactly. Yeah, I know. Like his obsession, where he's like basically obsessed with his secretary not finding the files,
Yeah.
is really funny. That was like great.
And that reminded me again a bit of American Psycho, because in American Psycho, it's sort of like he's shown to basically not do anything at his job, and I could imagine in this movie he's shown to basically do nothing at his job, and then when he is
Yeah.
given this one sort of small task, he becomes obsessive about it, and I could imagine him, Patrick Bateman, being similar as well in similar circumstances. So I thought that was but it's just so funny, and it takes up literally a third of the movie, pretty much this plot line. But it's so good. It is so funny. The best bit, my favorite bit, the bit that made me laugh so much, is when he finds out Elva is sick. So he drives all the way to like the Bronx or Brooklyn or wherever it is, and he's like, "Oh, I brought you some soup," and and he's like he's pretending that he's being nice, and then he just like forces her to come in and keep looking for the contract.
That's actually the whole plot line is so good that it's like when it like that's great. Like people have to appreciate that. Like that's a really good comedy right there. He just can't get it off of his mind. Like it's just
Mm,
it, and I mean it ends up playing a plot late. It ends up playing into the movie in a way, like
yes,
the obsession and everything.
yes. What else?
I thought this was a feminist version of the old vampire movies of like the black and white ones, because or at least
Mm,
the black and white ones of like the male again dominating the female and enslaving them.
mm.
Um, well, this is what happens. The female enslaves Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage just becomes obsessed and but is only being completely used by the female vampire
Well, the
queen.
thing is, it's not clear if it's again, it's semi. It is ambiguous. Well, I mean, I would say it's all in his head, basically,
Yeah, that's true.
because he meets her later on, and then she's like, "I don't even know who you are," when it's not a
That,
vision.
yeah.
And there's another, like, for instance, he gets the gun that Elva has, but it's filled with blanks, but he doesn't know that, and he tries to shoot himself in the head, but it doesn't kill him, so he thinks, "Oh, I must be immortal. I'm a vampire." And there's lots of little things
That's right.
happen that confirm to his delusion, or play into his delusion that he's turning into a vampire. And that's
Yeah, you're
basically
right.
what the movie is about: is a guy thinking he is becoming a vampire when he's just going insane.
Yeah, you're right. Like when you think back to the very first time that he got bit, um, that could have very well been in his head. But what may have not been in his head was the bat, And then what really sets it all off is I had this sexual arousal with a bat.
Yeah. And I think it's
Now,
it's it's similar to The Shining in that with The Shining, um, there's the implication that Jack Nicholson is already crazy before the beginning of the movie,
right.
basically. And I think with this movie, because he's already seeing a psychiatrist, etc., and his behavior, like already at the beginning towards his secretary, it's clear that he's already slightly unhinged to begin with. So uh, even though it doesn't necessarily give a
That's true.
clear, explicit, you can tell he's sort of going a bit crazy already.
One thing for jumping too far is just a thing I liked. Uh, when he starts to think he's a vampire and his house is all wrecked, um, the couch coffin.
Yes.
I thought that was great. The couch coffin was so good because I don't think that's ever been done in a movie before,
No,
and I do.
no, no. I really like that. Um, oh, and another thing, another little detail I really liked was there's a part where he goes into a bathroom and then he looks at himself in the mirror, um, and he's like aghast at what he's seeing. And the
Right.
implication is he thinks he can't see himself in the mirror, but as the audience, we see. So there's two mirrors. There's the mirror he's looking at, and then there's one like 90 degrees, which we can see from the camera angle. This is kind of confusing to explain visually, but
Right.
if you, I don't know if you remember this shot, but we can see in the mirror his reflection. So it's clear that whatever he's seeing is just a delusion.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So there's just lots of little details like that where I appreciate the filmmaking in this movie quite a lot.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I mean,
and
it's really it's about the Nicolas Cage performance, but it is held together by a solid, um, solid writing, I would say.
yeah, yeah. Well, then it goes to me that he's taking advantage of these women at the beginning. They only show a couple. They're both the same look, okay, and then the woman who enslaves him or supposedly enslaves him looks like the women we know that he takes advantage of.
Yeah,
And I just think that I don't know, like it just seems like he's getting what he deserves, I suppose, even though he's
yeah,
losing. It makes more sense that he's losing his mind, but I mean, he's also getting some sort of revenge on himself for
yeah.
just being a, what do you call it, a, I don't know, just a
Degenerate.
degenerate
Yeah.
pickup
Um,
artist.
and I love as well when he goes and he buys the fake teeth. Because it's
Yes.
like he thinks to himself, "Oh, I'm a vampire, so I need to have these teeth," and it's just sort of it's very clear that he's just gone crazy, basically. Yeah, I thought that
Yeah,
was hilarious.
the point where the woman, the supposed vampire woman, comes and like, what are you doing? She like
Mm,
pulls the teeth. You're
yeah,
not a vampire.
yeah,
Like she makes it clear to him, you are not a vampire.
yeah. Um,
And
uh, what else is there to talk about? Oh, the Mexican woman thinks that she got raped because she passes out.
that's what yeah,
She
exactly.
didn't
Because
actually though.
he never did, right?
No, he doesn't rape her. He did kill that one woman though by biting her neck
Yeah.
with the fake teeth. But
But
he,
why
aside from
does
that, he didn't actually rape that his secretary.
yeah, I didn't think he did.
She just
Didn't think
assumed that he did because of what
Mm.
he was doing basically.
He was just getting super aggressive more because again, I think he's just in delusion of him being a vampire and he's
Yeah,
going pretty nutty.
yeah.
So
Um,
yeah, it does. It is his down spiral. It's just him getting worse and worse and worse. I just don't understand the supposed vampire woman's role was confusing then to me because you're right. Like it all kind of plays out in the end as if she's not, because she says to him something like he's like, oh, he says something like you're my girl or I'm your
yeah,
guy or something. And she's like, oh, I don't think it doesn't appear to be. And then this other dude
yeah,
is there and he's like, yeah, it doesn't appear to be.
yeah.
And I didn't. I mean, that just to me is like, I just didn't get the. Well, in so on a real shallow level, he's become so pathetic. It's not worth her time anymore because like
Hmm.
why was she so obsessed with him? Like, was that all delusion? Like when she was like very obsessed with him, you know?
Well, she was only we. It was only 100% confirmed that she was not there as a hallucination that first night that they're together, and she bites him.
Oh,
Every time after that, it's ambiguous whether or not like it's a hallucination or is it something supernatural.
yeah, because even the second time she bites him for the very second time, it's the exact same scene as the
Yeah,
first time. Did you notice that?
yeah, and
Either that was like,
it's also like how did she get into his office? Oh, maybe she turned into a bat and flew in or whatever. But I don't know. It's yeah, it is left. And I mean, I would say it's pretty clear that he's just hallucinating it all.
yeah,
But that's the sort of the fun of the movie. Is that it is just him being crazy basically.
yeah, and you're right. I think it probably was all hallucin. Oh, I'm saying that wrong. Word wrong. He was hallucinating the whole time, and you really, I suppose it gets confirmed by the end of the movie. I suppose, like just by the again
Yeah,
ambiguous, but it gets so insane that you just have to know that he's not. Well, it does show that he's delusional at the end of the movie. Like it
yeah.
shows that he's somewhat delusional.
Um,
Why we don't know.
hmm. I like. I think the funniest bit is obviously when it's after he's sort of killed that girl, and then he's realized, oh no, I can't keep doing this. I'm a vampire now. I need to like kill myself. So he like finds that bit of you know old rotten
Palette.
wood or whatever. Yeah, yeah, the pallet. And he's just walking through the street trying to get people to kill him. And I love that he like the night before he calls his psychiatrist saying we need to meet up, like this is an emergency. And then he thinks he's like gone to her office, but it's just him like stood in the corner of a
Like a
street.
column.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the corner of a building.
And that's so the dialogue there is so funny. He's like, oh, I just want love. And then she goes, oh, well, here's a woman for you. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
perfect. And it's like, oh, by the way, I did rape somebody. Um, but he didn't.
Oh no,
He,
that's okay.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
and how it jumps back between
yeah,
him outside staring at a building covered in blood and looking like just crazy,
yeah,
holding the piece of wood, back to like him looking just perfect, having that
yeah,
that accent that he has. Like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Um,
oh, I did rape someone, and I also killed a woman. Oh, that's fine. Oh, that's fine. Oh, and the
yeah.
woman behind him was like, "Oh, okay. Wow, did you really?"
Yeah, that
Yeah,
bit's so
he's
good.
reaching full delusion. Oh, and he does remark in that talk with his therapist when he's just full on bonkers. He says to his therapist he's gonna go out into the jungle and find love, and that's why I specifically wanted to call
Mm.
it jungle fever.
But then that last woman is white, so.
That's right. I know. It's true.
Well, you
But he
never
says,
know.
well, I mean, you could also call it the concrete jungle. So I suppose that
Yes.
goes both ways.
Yes.
But I just wanted to make sure I said that. But the rape, the I raped someone nonchalantly is the
Yeah.
funniest line. But it goes fun. It's not just the funniest line in the movie. It goes with the fact that he's staring at a
Yeah.
wall
Yeah. The whole
as like
context of it.
yeah, he's like a homeless guy at that point, like a
Yeah.
deranged homeless guy.
Um, and what else? And then that's pretty much the end of the movie. And then at this point, the brother of the secretary finds him and then stakes him through the heart.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, he offers Nicolas Cage kind of offers up that pallet stake onto
yeah.
his chest, and then yeah, the guy just drives it in
Yeah.
because he's
Because
so mad at him.
yeah, he wants to get killed.
Now to say that isn't that the same? So it kind of ends the same as Martin.
I know it is weird because he's getting killed Yeah, because he didn't actually rape her. He thinks he did as well. But what we're shown
Yeah,
is he rips open her top. Like
yeah.
he doesn't do anything to her underwear or he pull down his pants or there's nothing like that. So
No,
all he does
nothing.
is he
No.
rips open her top. She faints, and then he's goes crazy and tries to shoot himself in the head with a gun.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah,
yeah, and like it's Martin. It ends the same with the same idea of like he didn't really do it,
yeah,
and it's about two guys that are in like some pretty heavy delusion. Now, there's obviously other differences, but I found it very interesting that I was like, maybe Flooded, you picked it as just coincidence, but or on purpose, but they feel like very similar movies, and I almost wondered. I thought I made a note. I'm like, no, Nick. I know it's not known. Like Vampire's Kiss is not a remake of Martin. I don't think it's said as that, but Nick Cage did do like Bad Lieutenant as a remake,
mm. Well, I
and
think the script writer of Vampire's Kiss definitely watched Martin, without a doubt.
yeah,
So because that ending, it's the exact same thing. It's the ironic vampire death.
yeah.
So it's unusual.
I thought so.
Um,
I thought it was very unusual.
but yeah, I already trying to think what else is there to say. Um, yeah, it is kind of just a movie about, I guess, yeah, obsession and delusion. And I think it's like what makes him snap is he finally meets a girl that he is in love with and doesn't want her to leave immediately, but then he realizes she did leave. I guess
So it's immediately, yeah,
that is kind
yeah.
of the what made him snap. Um,
That's a good point. I think
yeah.
you're right. I think that was it. Because the
Um,
shaking, he was like very, very shaky in the teacup, like like coffee cup or whatever.
yeah, and I think as well, there was another little details I noticed in his office. He had a picture of Franz Kafka. I'm pretty sure it was.
Oh,
And so I think, I don't know, it's a reference to the metamorphosis somewhat, like becoming this, bug, or like he just sort of devolves. I'm not sure if that was deliberate or maybe it wasn't even a picture of Kafka, but I was reminded of the
really?
metamorphosis somewhat as well.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah.
But it would have made sense if it was because it's like a publishing company and I don't know, subtle little nod. But
Yeah,
I'll
that's
have to go back and double check, but I think it was.
yeah. Well, then I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
It was good, and I mean, for the idea that it was a psychological, like it was a dark comedy, but it was like yeah, like I think the internet labels it as a horror comedy, which yeah, it is. That's what it is. But that they would go so deep, like it may have been ahead of its time. Like people may have been like, "What is this?" You know?
Yeah, it's ahead of its time for sure, and I think at the time Nicolas Cage obviously didn't have the same sort of audience that he does now. Like he didn't have that appreciation that he does now. So um,
Yeah.
this is an essential Nicolas Cage film. This might be my favorite performance of his. Maybe
It's
certainly
certain.
it's certainly one of his best.
I think this and the simplicity of Gone in 60 Seconds is the best I can give for Nicolas Cage.
Gone in 60
Like,
seconds. That's a good one.
it is a good one. Oh, and Jennifer, the woman who is the vampire is Jennifer Beals. I don't even know if she's African American, but she just looked African American, but I don't know if she
Oh,
necessarily.
yeah, because the way they did her, I guess it's just the '80s perm.
Yeah, it's the perm. I'm sorry to say,
Yeah. Oh,
their
so
fault.
yeah.
Uh,
Um,
can I say something that might? I don't want to go against the show, but I just had to look up just under Vampire's Kiss. Just Googled it. There's literally a thing that says how Martin and Vampire's Kiss are strikingly similar.
oh, well, there you
So
go. There you go.
people pointed it out, I suppose.
Well, they are both movies which, yeah, they're both character study movies. They center around the devolution of a character, and it's ambiguous as to whether or not they're actually a vampire. So they are, yeah, weirdly similar, but they
Okay.
are, yeah, just different takes on the same thing. Very similar
Yeah,
theme.
no,
Um,
it's good though. Like I it's good. they work well in that sense. I was surprised that they did turn out like that. That
It
they
is a
ended
good
up
double
being.
feature for sure. Yeah, excellent choice by me.
Yes, it was an excellent choice for you.
I like.
But yeah,
I always find that there's, whenever you pick two movies and you compare them, you'll find a lot more things than you might initially expect between them. Yeah.
that's true.
Mm.
Especially when you're going for like themes and stuff. Like yeah, like these are like there's so many different versions of vampire movies. I've never seen vampire movies like this. I don't think.
Yeah, they're both deconstructions of vampire films, I guess. They're
Right.
not they're certainly not a parody or like a satire of vampire. It's not like they don't use it's like they make use of the genre of vampire to say something about something else, or to talk about something else, or to do something else. So, um, yeah, like whereas say I don't know, I'm trying to think what's like I don't know, like What We Do in the Shadows. If you know that movie, that's sort of like it's a vampire comedy. It's a different sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about Vampire's Kiss?
I no. I
It's
think
because
that I don't want
it's really the experience of it. You have to watch it, but it's well done.
to. Nicolas Cage makes it like that's the whole point, right?
Yeah,
Like
the
he
whole
said.
point is to enjoy his performance, basically. And there's other little details there that if you're a movie person, you might enjoy. Like I thought the mirror thing was cool, and there's other little
Yeah.
details like that. But yeah, it's just you're there to watch Nicolas Cage be crazy for like 90 minutes, basically.
Yeah, it's true. It's kind of like Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is like a wacko guy. We all know he's like got all these weird things outside of his acting life, but I've always enjoyed his movies. And Nicolas Cage is kind of like, oh, I don't know exactly that much outside of Nicolas Cage's personal life, but it's like the different. It's like a different thing. It's like Nicolas Cage's craziness is within the movies he does, but
Yeah,
yet I like his
yeah,
I like his movies, man. I have to say.
yeah. Oh, me too. I'll watch anything with him in it. I can't think of one that I didn't like, or like I didn't at least think was okay.
Did you watch
Uh,
Bad Lieutenant?
yeah, yeah, I've seen that. That's good. That's another
Okay.
good one.
Okay.
I actually reviewed the first Bad Lieutenant though as well on the show.
Yes, and I've heard it, and it's great.
Yes. I think we're done. I think we're pretty much done. What would you recommend? I mean, I'd definitely recommend. If you're listening to this, I would probably recommend without reservation Vampire's Kiss. I think if you've stumbled
Yep.
onto this show, you're more than likely the sort of person that would like that. Martin, I would say if you are into 70s movies, you will love it. I'll say that much.
Yeah, it has all the tropes of. It's not a movie in the '70s that's outside of the '70s. It's within its decade, within the current
Yeah,
culture and the time.
yeah,
Yeah, I would recommend Vampire's Kiss to check it out because there is some memorable parts, and Nicolas Cage's performance really ends up being like Nicolas Cage makes you feel 100% confused whether he's a good actor or not. 100%. But I mean, it's likable. Like I honestly have always liked his stuff. This is his most wacky role that I've seen, and maybe Raising Arizona. He came off pretty
Mm,
wacky. But yeah, I guess I probably haven't seen every Nicolas Cage movie. I've seen a lot, and like when he gets upset, he does do kind of the same actions. Like in Vampire's Kiss, when he really gets yelling at the therapist, he crosses his arms once, he puts his
mm,
hands on once. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like he does these weird gestures. He's done them in other movies. Like he did them in movies that are completely different than Vampire's Kiss. He did those exact same gestures in The Family Man, which is like
Ah, wait, The Family
kind of
Man?
yeah, it's like a Christmas romantic movie.
Oh, I'm thinking of The Weatherman, which he was also in.
No, yeah, he did The Weatherman, but in The Family Man, he's like
Oh, okay.
it's not a family movie per se, but yet it is. And he gets really mad, and he does the exact same kind of huffy
Uh,
puffy, put his arms on his hips, just like in
I love
Vampires.
that. I never misfiled anything, not ever, not once, or something like that.
Yeah, that is great. And I have to appreciate, like, it made me think, okay, if he does that in other movies, well, what's wrong with that? Like,
Mm.
that's like
Well, lots of actors do that when you start to watch lots of their movies. Like Robert De Niro has certain ticks and things that he does in heaps of different movies, and
Yeah, we don't watch him because he needs to be so different every movie.
yeah,
We
yeah,
actually come back. We come back for that actor oftentimes. So
yeah,
yeah, that makes
yeah.
sense. Especially Nicolas Cage's, because Nicolas Cage is like I said, you don't. He's not a character actor, right? But like he comes off
He's
kind of.
like a somehow this bizarre mixture of normal actor, or what do you call him, lead actor and character actor. He's pretty
Yeah,
much, I would call it, because the thing is, yeah, it's like I would call it post naturalism, because most actors sort of try and just be, they try and play the character as if they were a real person most of the time, especially leads. But he, I don't know,
yeah.
he like goes beyond that.
It's almost as if the top Hollywood executives, like it's as if they're all like they love him so much, and they just were like from the beginning of his career, just yeah, Nicholas gets to be in movies. Don't question it. Like the director might come and say, "What's with this guy?" And they're like, "Hey, don't worry about it. We're paying you. We're paying him. Just let him be." And he just keeps going like that. Like I just can't. Other than that, it's like, how does he? I know he's a Coppola. Like I know that's
Yeah,
he's
yeah, yeah.
connected, but at the same time, I'm just like I also do enjoy him too. So he's a hard guy to pin down
I
because
think
isn't like
he was in a
I don't know.
few successful films, basically in the '90s and late '80s, and then not this movie, obviously. Like he was in Raising Arizona. He was in
Yeah.
like Leaving Las Vegas. He got an Oscar for that,
Right. Right.
and he is. That's another good movie. I highly recommend the first 20 minutes of that movie. The rest of it is still good, but the first 20 minutes of that is amazing.
Oh, okay.
Because the first 20 minutes, it's literally just him just drinking and getting super, super drunk and like going to the liquor store and buying a whole shopping cart of liquor and stuff. And then there's like, because there's no plot at that point anyway. I like that movie. Uh,
And then he did. I mean, the blockbusters was like what he got into Face Off and The Rock and Con Air.
yeah, and then he did. What did he do? National Treasure and that. And I think it was sort of around, yeah, the mid 2000s is when people stopped liking him. And
Yeah.
then it's only the last 5 years that he's sort of come back as now everyone's worked out whether or not they like him, and there's enough people that do like him that he can be in these movies again. Like he was in, Color Out of Space was good, Mandy was good, and now he's in this new one, Pig, which I want to check out. So I might have to do a mini review
Right.
on
And
that when I watch that. So
they're all kind of along the same lines. All three of those movies, right?
no, they're more smaller independent movies with a director that clearly loves Nicolas Cage and wants to utilize him. You know.
Yeah, but is this new Pig one like Mandy, where he kind of has to go into the deep dark depths to like rescue someone or get someone?
Yeah, I think it's a similar sort of thing, but I don't know how esoteric it is compared to Mandy, or how obviously
Right.
esoteric it is.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Mm.
Oh no, these were good movies. Vampire's Kiss and Martin
Yeah, this
were
is good.
good. Yeah.
They were good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I think we'll cut it off there. Thank you everyone for listening. Make sure to follow at Dashhand Obese. I think we actually we heard the actual Dashhand Obese a couple times throughout the show as well. Um, yeah.
That idiot.
Goodbye, everyone. All right, hold on.